Hello out there, my fellow adventurers. Esper here. I'm making this video about house rules. I'm going to show the house rules that I currently use in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I'm also going to give a little bit of explanation as to why I use them. House rules are largely a matter of personal preference, and they are also usually a work in progress. You learn, you adapt, so what I'm presenting here, I may revise this at some point in time. It could happen. Feel free to leave comments too. If you have some feedback about one of my house rules, or if you want to show a house rule of your own, I'll be interested to see. Also, I'll post these house rules in the video description. First has to do with encumbrance. Carrying excessive equipment hinders a character. If you carry weight in excess of 5 times your strength score, your character then becomes encumbered. So your speed drops by 10 feet, and you get disadvantage, or you have disadvantage, on swimming and acrobatics. If you carry excess of 10 times your strength score, you're heavily encumbered. Your speed drops by 20 feet, and you have disadvantage on any kind of ability check or attack roll or saving throw that's based on strength, dexterity, or constitution. So any physical thing, basically. You'll notice that a lot of my house rules favor realism. I like things that are realistic, not overboard. This is a game, but that add in a bit of realism and that are simple to implement. This leads into the second one, which is swimming in armor. Swimming while wearing medium armor increases the difficulty by 5. Heavy armor increases the difficulty by 10. So swimming in armor is just hard. It's difficult. It constricts your movements. It can weigh you down, and especially if you're wearing things like mail or even plate, realistically you're just going to sink. So this is a simple rule, and it just adds in that additional element of realism. Opportunity attacks, number 3. So in standard, rules is written only leaving a monster's threatened range, melee reach range, is what provokes an opportunity attack. I also say that actions that take away a significant amount of your focus or cause you to let your guard down gives an enemy a chance to make an opportunity attack. So examples of this would be drinking a potion, loading a crossbow or a sling, something that's a little bit more of a process to load it. The crossbow expert feat does avoid that opportunity attack, by the way. Also interacting with complex objects such as picking a lock, working on a mechanism of some sort or a puzzle. So the simplest way I can put this is imagine that you are fighting an opponent, really fighting to the death or fighting for your life, and he starts drinking a potion right in front of you. Are you just going to stand there and do nothing? Probably not. The fourth has to do with rolling your hit dice. So when you gain a level and you roll your class's hit die, you gain a minimum of half the die. So 3 hit points off a d6, 5 off a d10, etc. And of course you add in the con modifier. I have 2 main reasons for this. One is that it's just funner. It really sucks to roll a 1 on your class hit die, such a crucial thing. I had an experience in 3.5 D&D where I had a barbarian, and this was early on in my career in D&D. And, I was going through these challenges and encounters, and I thought it was really hard, and I finally leveled up. It was this awesome moment, and I rolled a 1 on my D12. Actually, for 2 levels in a row, I rolled a 1 on my D12, and it was just such a bummer. It just sucked. It's not fun. And the second reason I do this one is that the characters in my campaigns need it. I run difficult encounters. They need those hit points. The 5th house rule that I have has to do with ability scores. So when a player generates a new character's ability scores, he can use either the point buy, standard point buy, or the traditional rolling options, roll 4d6, drop the lowest. However, when you generate the ability scores using the rolling method, we're going to then total up all the modifiers, all the pluses and maybe a few minuses. And that total needs to range between +4 and +8 in order to avoid characters that are very underpowered or very overpowered. So if you get a total of below +4, You just reroll, just start over. If you get a total of +8, all right, congrats, you've got an awesome character. Just adjust some of the scores down a little bit in order to reach a total of +8. And I tell you, if you have +8, you are going to be above average. That's going to be noticeably strong, just not overpowered strong. The 6 has to do with magic thrown weapons. Simple concept here. If it's a thrown weapon, like a throwing hammer, and it's magical, you make that attack and it just comes back to your hand, or it comes back to you in whatever fashion that seems appropriate. Again, it's simple. It makes sense. It's fun. It's so annoying to have a thrown weapon that's magical. You throw it and you have to reposition to go get it, or wait till the end of the encounter to be able to use it again. Hopefully you succeed on the encounter and you don't have to run away. Hopefully you didn't throw it into lava or down a pit. Hopefully an enemy didn't steal it. It's just a bummer when it's that way. While the archer's magic bow is fine, the warrior's magic sword is fine, and you have to keep throwing away your item. So vulnerability, number 7. Vulnerability causes the target to take 50% more damage, not 100% more damage, not double damage. So I think this double damage vulnerability can get out of control. I've seen it make things swing wildly, both against players and against monsters. So, for example, you hit the mummy with a fire spell for 20 damage, it's going to take 30 because of vulnerability. So it's, you still noticeably had an advantage there. It's just not an extreme situation. Number 8 has to do with the Great Weapon Fighter and Sharpshooter feats. The penalty to your attack is equal to your proficiency bonus, and the additional damage is double your proficiency bonus. So it scales. +10 damage at the low levels is very, very strong. And this just allows the feat to scale with the characters. The fighter class, specifically the champion fighter, I noticed that the 7th level class feature is just underwhelming, kind of boring. It's very underwhelming. As is, it gives you half your proficiency bonus on untrained or unproficient strength, dex, and con checks, which in reality, in practice, that turns out to be half your proficiency with like sleight of hand, maybe stealth or acrobatics. And you also get an increase to running long jumps, a number of feet equal to your strength bonus. It's very underwhelming. I think if even this was a level 1 feature, players would still look at it and say, it's kind of mediocre. But level 7, other classes are getting access to 4th level spells and just other powerful things, and that just comes out really wimpy. So I just strengthened it is all I did. You get proficiency with athletics, or if you already have proficiency, you gain expertise. I imagine most fighters will already have expertise, so really it's to give proficiency. So really it's to give expertise in athletics. The running long jumps just straight up increase by 5 feet, and on your turn you can make a grapple or a shove attack as a bonus action, which is strong but not overpowered strong, and it's 7th level. And it's simple, it's cool, it's fun, and it fits the theme and the abilities of what the champion does. The Ranger class, just straight up use the official Ranger class update. Wizards of the Coast knew that the class needed improvement. Everyone knew it. They updated it. It's much better. The Warlock class. The Warlock, I think, is another class that needs a little bit of work. There's some different opinions on both sides of the fence on this one. My main nitpicks with it are you don't know enough spells, and Eldritch Blast is in this weird limbo between optional spell and class feature. So I just allowed your patron spells instead of merely just adding them to the spell list. That's right, if you carefully read the player's handbook, you don't just know your patron spells. You have to decide between them or the standard Warlock spells. So your class features are literally competing against one another, which is so odd. And I didn't even notice that at first. And most people don't. You read the cleric with the domain spells, you read the druid with the circle of the land spells, And so with the Warlock, you're just expecting it to be that way, and it's what makes sense. So I did that. Doesn't overpower the Warlock, just gives him a little bit more variety and helps develop the theme or the flavor of the patron. And then I just let all Warlocks know Eldritch Blast. Eldritch Blast is essentially a class feature of the Warlock. Why it's listed as an optional spell is a bit odd. And the last house rule is for experience points when it comes to groups of monsters. So the experience points gained for fighting groups of monsters includes the adjusted difficulty modifier. If you look at the Dungeon Master's Guide, when you design an encounter for a group of monsters, you take the total of all the experience points that those monsters are worth, so just total the XP value. Then you have to multiply it by like a 1.5 times 2 times 2.5, etc., depending upon the size of the group. The Dungeon Master Guide said don't award that adjusted amount. Only use it to gauge the difficulty of the group, because groups of monsters are more difficult in general than a single monster. But that doesn't make sense to me. Experience points should be based on the level of difficulty. That's really how the whole game works. Higher difficulty, higher risk gives you higher reward. Lower difficulty, lower risk, lower significance gives you less experience points. The only exception that I do with this is if it's a case of minion monsters that are far below the party's level. So for example, let's say it's a 5th level party, and in an encounter we have a challenge rating 6 monster, and then it has, say, like 3 challenge rating 1/4 minions with it. Those little minions are just so far below the level of the party that they do add a little something to the fight, but not enough to gain that whole adjusted difficulty modifier. So in that case, I don't add it in. So I hope these house rules were helpful for you. Hope you got some good ideas. Maybe they'll improve your game at home. Feel free to, like I said, leave a comment with some input or showing me one of your own house rules. I'd be happy to see. Thanks as always. To be continued. May your adventures be many, my friends.